On today's show, how do we measure success for Luka and Kyrie on the Mavericks next year? We'll talk about that and answer more of your mailbag questions on today's Locked On Mavs.
I'm Luka Doncic, and this is Locked On Mavericks podcast.
Mavericks, NBA champions. Bang! It's good, and the Mavericks have won the game.
If you don't believe, you shouldn't be here.
Loyalty never fades away.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member and NBA channel manager for the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for being part of the show, being everydayers, and making Locked On Mavs your first listen each and every day. Subscribe or follow for free wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. The best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day and to comment anything below. Let us know in the comment section. What would you consider a successful season for the Mavericks next year if they keep Luka and Kyrie together? Really interested to see what you guys have to say about that. If you want to support the show, text us, get text alerts from us, participate in our mailbag like we're doing today. Subscribe to our subtext. There's a link in the description below. You can also text the number 214-643-8637, and you'll get a notification, and you can sign up and subscribe. You can sign up for a trial and text us, and then, support the show. We really appreciate it. Joining me, as always, my co-host, writer, contributor at Mavs.com. The mailman, the one more thing king. What you got for me, Isaac Harrus?
You reading off that phone number made me feel like I was listening to like one of those like betting things,
Or like
for Nevada, and for Texas, and it's like I can't skip it fast enough.
we have that for FanDuel. You want me to read it?
No.
21 plus in select states. First state online real money wager only based on non-withdrawals.
Blast you into the sound.
Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit FanDuel.com. Says Colorado, Iowa, Maryland, Minnesota.
We're both. I'm gonna fight you. We're both watching the playoffs right now. Just off the top, is there a series that's really captivating your eyeballs right now?
Oh, well, it's Sacramento, Golden State. We're recording right during Game 3, so we don't know what's we don't know what's happening in that. But that one has been awesome. Watching the Kings do their thing. Obviously, Draymond with the stomp heard around the NBA world. Clippers. Did
anybody do a podcast on that?
No one. Absolutely no one did one. That's a market that hasn't been hit yet. Also, Clippers Suns has been awesome until Kawhi went down. Like his injuries and Paul George's injuries, like literally the 2 years that Paul George and Kawhi were both healthy in the first round, the Mavericks played them both years. Like the injury luck the Mavs have had in that is actually kind of wild. But today's show, we're getting into your mailbag questions. We have subtext, so you can subscribe to our subtext, submit a mailbag question. We got a bunch of them here. We'll talk about the offseason, what would make a successful offseason, what's the Mavs' biggest need in the offseason. We'll talk about what do we want Luka to learn and grow from this season. And then let's start here, though, because I thought this was a great one from Chrissy on subtext. What is your measurement? That'd be wild. Say hi to John Legend for us. What is your measurement of success for the Kyrie experiment? How long would you give it to work? Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, well, how long do you give it to work? You're going to have, let's assume, if he comes back, he's going to come back on a longer term deal. So 3 to 4 year deal. Let's say that. So how long do you give it to work? I mean, it has to be shorter than what you would normally give a pairing to work, because you're not pairing two young guys together and saying, hey, you have 3 to 4 years to make it work. You're on a clock with Luka. So, I think we're going to hear all of the, if Kyrie does come back this summer, we're going to hear all of the, I'm trying to think of the nice word to say it, like the proper word to say, like the narrative.
Anything.
No, but like the narrative behind it will be, hey, this is our first off season with these two guys together.
Did you say first healthy off season?
First healthy off season.
Take a drink.
First like normal Mavs off season, in a while, with that, and it's like. So I think, though. Okay, but you
missed the playoffs.
I think some of that, you'd hear that for Kyrie coming back. So I want to say, how long would I give it to work? A year,
like a year from now. So like one calendar year.
One calendar year, and I think you got to make a decision then, because you just don't have, like, you can't go into it saying, all right, yeah, we got 2 or 3 years to see if it works, right? You don't. Like you got to
No,
figure
they
that out,
don't.
and you should have a pretty good handle on it. I don't think you should have a handle on it now, because I still think they deserve more time. But a year from now, you should know pretty confident, like, this is a pairing that's going to work long term.
I think to start with, like, to answer the second part of the question, how long do you give it for it to work? You have to answer the first question first. What's your measurement of success for the Kyrie experiment? I think the measurement of success is, like, you got to get back to the Western Conference Finals, right? Like, I think you got to win at least 1 or 2 playoff series. That's success, because that's what Luka is. It's wild to me. The more that I'm watching the playoffs, the more that I'm thinking about the Mavericks literally have a top 5 player not in the playoffs right now. Like, that is so unprecedented.
Yeah. And that's why I said there's not a specific conference finals or finals for me to determine if the duo works. Cause I think there's a world that Luka and Kyrie, they look amazing together and they work and they're super efficient.
Yeah.
But they go 6 or 7 games in the second round and they get put out by a really good team. And we're walking away from it saying, all right, that worked. It's just they lost because of the other pieces or an injury to a big man down low or something like it, or no bench. So
yeah,
that's all I think.
I guess it becomes, how do you answer that? How do you define the Kyrie experiment? Are you defining it as Luka and Kyrie together? Are you defining it as Luka and Kyrie as the main cogs in this Mavericks wheel that rotates and tries to win games and tries to make the playoffs again and tries to, eventually win a championship? Like, is that how you're defining the Kyrie experiment? Because that's an interesting way to put it. Because if it's, again, okay, well, Luka and Kyrie work. And I think you and I both agree, it worked to a degree. They still outscored opponents when they were on the court together. It's when you separated them at all. There's just so much on those two guys for them to be perfect offensively that you have to be at least decent to good defensively in order to make up for, for them and for that duo and all that. And they just didn't get anywhere close to that. And they were bad in clutch games for various reasons that we've talked about a lot. But yeah, what do you count as the experiment? Is it just Luka and Kyrie, or is it Luka and Kyrie and the Mavs as like a whole?
Yeah, I think it's the Luka Kyrie experiment, and I think it's more than how you measure the success of those two is in the Kyrie contract, they win a title. I think it's, let's say it's a 3-year deal. Let's say it's a 4-year deal. I think I'm looking at that like 3 years. In 3 years, sometime in the next 3 years, you are
in position to win a title.
In position, or you're at least in the finals. Like,
yeah, in position to compete for it.
That's I think a success of the Kyrie Luka experiment. But see, like, I think it's more than in position to compete, because like I think if you don't reach the finals with those two he comes back over the course of 3 years, I don't think you can say it's a success. That duo is a success.
I mean, especially if they don't make the playoffs again.
Like, would you say Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum was a success? They made it to one conference finals, a lot of playoffs. I mean, no, right? Like,
but I don't think CJ's not on the same level as Luka or Kyrie.
No. But that's just like kind of what I'm looking at. I think the only way for me to say
what about Kawhi and Paul George? They made one conference finals, and then they've made the second round.
It has not been a success. No.
Yeah, they made the second round a couple times.
No, not at all. You got to at least make a finals
with those two guys being that good, and so that's where it would be. Yeah, you would have to at least be in position to win a finals, and so it's going to come down to the other guys around them. Is how we're going to like evaluate if this experiment works, and so to give it, like Isaac said, how long do you give it to work? You give it the rest of the contract, as long as if the other guys are in place. That's the other part of this question is, okay, are you also assuming that the other guys are in place, that the Mavericks have role players again? Like, did they have a good complement around those two, that we can't use that as an excuse anymore? Because if you are, then it becomes a different question, but that's a complete hypothetical right now. Coming up, Brian has a great question. Is there any chance for a better outcome on a Kyrie sign and trade instead of just re-signing him? Should the Mavericks sign and trade Kyrie? We'll talk about that next. But before we do, let me tell you about the Nissan Aria Player of the Week. Isaac, I don't know if I have a Player of the Week because the Mavericks haven't played in a while. But I guess if I'm going to give it to somebody, I think it's De'Aaron Fox. I've probably given it to him before, but he's the most electric player because he's still playing in the NBA. in the NBA playoffs right now. He's just been incredible. He's been brilliantly fierce driving the basket, electric. He's been stunningly powerful in his drives, his mid-range. It's been awesome to watch. It's been great to see that crowd, too, the way that they have just come together and rallied around that team. All that kind of stuff. You love it. So I'm going to name De'Aaron Fox Nissan's most electric player of the week. And the 2023 Aria packs pin you to your seat power and premium intelligence all-in-one EV. The EV for people who love to drive. Shop now at nissanusa.com. All right, Isaac. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us, being part of the Raccoon Squad, being everydayers, and listening to Locked On Mavs every day. We'll be here throughout the offseason. We've been answering questions from our subtext. People have been texting in questions. If you want to text us in a question, go ahead and click the link in the description. Brian asks, is there any chance for a better outcome on a Kyrie sign-in trade?
This one was really interesting to me because, one, you have to start with, in order to do a signing trade, you got to find a team that's willing to sign him, and it's a team that he wants to go to. So you narrow your teams down pretty quick then if we want to like assume the teams, which once again, you can never really assume anything with Kyrie. But so like, let's just look at the LA teams. Let's look at some of the big market teams.
Yeah.
Clippers, Lakers. Let's add the Suns in there. Heck, let's add the Heat in there.
Yeah, sure.
Is there any realistic sign and trade package between those four teams that you're saying we're getting the better player back?
Man, the Lakers one is Anthony Davis, right? And so you look at that, and like I think Anthony Davis, because of his two-way potential, I think is better because he's just such a menace, and I think he would make the Mavericks better
if he's healthy.
If he's healthy, which is the caveat there for that. If you look at the Heat, they're not sending you Bam or Jimmy Butler, are they?
No, I know some people try to make the jokes about the Bam stuff, and I'm like, dude, Bam would literally, if we had to do like top 5 like perfect picks, and that's next to Luka, Bam's on that list for me.
Especially with this current system and defensive system the Mavs are trying to run.
Yeah. So like the Heat one's hard
because I don't think that would happen.
No, and you look at the Clippers and say, all right, let's say they lose in the first round. Do they entertain a Paul George type of thing? But
I don't think the Mavericks can. Like that's probably a whole other podcast.
Oh, they're discussing the podcast.
That's a whole other episode because would you trade for those two guys considering how much time they've missed via injury? Like Kyrie's already an injury-prone player in his career. And Paul George and Kawhi, just every postseason now, it's one of those two guys has been out, or both of them are now like out for various different things. Like I don't think you can trust them at this point.
A Paul George Kyrie would be interesting though. Paul George next to Luka wing and all that.
I mean, yeah, if he's gonna play.
yeah, for sure. And then what was the other one in that? The Suns. I mean, you're talking like Chris Paul at that point. I mean, I guess if you wanted to debate the DeAndre Ayton part, but yeah. So the question is there a better alternative? Is there a way to, like, if they did a sign and trade route with Kyrie, for you to come out on the other side a better team, to where if you just had kept Kyrie? I think there are a few scenarios that would be interesting. Like if the Lakers, I mean, I've said this, I've been saying this. If the Lakers get put out in the first round to Memphis, I think you are going to hear some grumblings. I think you're going to hear the Kyrie for AD grumblings I think you'll slowly start to hear it seep out a little bit here and there.
Matt asked the question, do you think Luka will learn or grow from this season? I kind of want to take it in a different direction. Say, what do we want Luka to learn from this season? And I think there's a couple things. I think you hope that he looks at this season and says, man, this season is sort of like
this sucked.
This sucks. Exactly. Like this whomps. This is the worst. This is, one of the first years where he's like, oh man, I can't just roll out of bed and go and win at the highest level, because each year it felt like they had leveled up. It felt like the Mavs had leveled up, even though they lost in the first round for 2 years. It still felt like they were taking the next step as a team. It felt like that Luka was taking them that next level. And then all of a sudden you get to this season and it just all comes crumbling down for various reasons, but Luka one of them. And you hope Luka goes, okay, I was so bad in clutch games this season, in clutch moments this season. You looked at, there's a Reddit post right now where Luka normally shooting like 50, 60% an effective field goal percentage in clutch moments. This year he shot like 38 or 31, which is below the league average of 38 in clutch situations. So like Luka was a bad clutch player this year. He just was. Statistically, he just was. I almost got that word out. He just was. And so you hope that he looks and says, I got to be better conditioned. I got to be better ready to carry a better workload, or let me do the both, or I've got to change the way that I play a little bit. It can't just be all on me. I can't just have a 40% usage percentage. I'm not a center. I'm not Giannis. I'm not Embiid where my usage is just me getting the ball on the block and handling the ball and kicking out or dunking, right? Like you don't get easy buckets because you're the player in the NBA that's doubled the most. Statistically, you're doubled the most in the NBA. Luka makes the hardest buckets in the league, and he can't have a 40% usage percentage if that's still the case, and he's still in the same condition that he's still in and the same workload that he's in.
Yeah, I hope he views this offseason kind of like that Suns loss early in that series that we were on this podcast after that saying,
Game 2.
Dude, he just got punked. Like, they made fun of him. They were laughing. It was embarrassing. And we were sitting there saying, man, hopefully this is a moment that we look back at Luka's career and say, that's where he's like, nah, like that ain't going to happen again type of thing.
Yeah.
And obviously they won that series. It was huge. You know, everybody's laughing when they're up and all that stuff. I hope that he looks at this season kind of the same thing that, hey, like, yeah, I'm so naturally good. I'm like getting up and just walking out of bed. I'm a top 10 player in this league, in the world. But for me to reach the level that he wants to get to, I think that's what I'm hoping he views this offseason as. Yeah, I'm not going to have another season like this. He got more hate this season than ever before from national media to the own fan base and all of that of like
his coach.
The fatigue of like, dude, like the complaining, the, you know, out of shape stuff, you know, some of the style of play stuff. And so I really am banking on we're going to see a new Luka Doncic come, you know, training camp.
Yeah, I really hope so. I hope this is the season.
I shouldn't say new. A
new look.
A new look, a refreshed, man, I enjoyed
hungry.
My time off, a hungry, a motivated. You see it in his body. You see it in his
hungry to win.
Yeah, not that hungry. You know,
maybe hungry. Maybe he's hungry.
He's like, dude, I haven't eaten like too much.
Dude, I've eaten salads.
But no, like you said, like you could see it in his whole body. Like he looks different. He's acting different. He's refreshed. And you could tell like, okay, you really took advantage of having the extra 2 months off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Coming up, let's talk about the Mavs offseason. What would be a successful offseason?
We're flying through these questions, by the way.
This is number 4 is what we're through. What would be a successful offseason for the Dallas Mavericks? Talk about that coming up. But before we do, let me tell you about eBay Motors. Just like Luka, the Mavs, and the players they need around them, a championship team has to have every player fit around it. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure that every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to my garage. Look for the green check to know that part will absolutely fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, Isaac Harrus, thanks everybody for hanging out with us on a Subtext Mailbag Friday. Submit your questions. It's the S words that are getting me today. Submit your questions on Subtext.
You been drinking?
Just water.
I got some cider waiting on me right now.
What kind of cider is it? Do you like warm cider or cold cider?
Cold.
Some people do warm cider.
No. Like I like warm cider at like Christmas time.
Yeah, right.
Like that's, you know, kid appropriate. But I've gotten into some hard cider a little bit.
Bates asked a question. Bates asked like 18 questions. Bates, we're only getting to one, bud. Sorry. We're just getting one.
Come back next Friday.
Yeah. What would a successful offseason look like? And what would not a successful offseason look like in a general sense?
Yeah, I like this question, Bates. Great job.
Good job, Bates. It was 1 for 6.
Successful off season. I didn't like your other 17 questions. Kyrie won. Is there a world that the offseason is successful and Kyrie doesn't come back?
I think that was question 3 we just answered today.
Well,
any chance that there's a better outcome for a sign-in trade, right? Like that would be the other outcome because you got to get something for him. You can't just let him walk.
Well, yeah, there's a world that like he walks and then like you sign some into the cap space. Like,
so you think just like a Kyrie for Fred VanVleet like swap that
Kyrie walks so Fred could run.
You're probably also losing some guys in that with that too, right? Because you'd have to clear space for him.
Possibly. But it looks like this.
Oh, you just went, I don't know if everybody heard that. You just went complete robot voice. Try again.
Successful looks like. Am I still talking like a robot?
No, I think you're back now. You're back now. Wow.
I'm back, baby.
You just went full RoboCop for like a minute.
Sorry. I'm like, I haven't been charged up.
Oil can.
It starts with Kyrie first, and then you address, you get some wings and you get a big. You make a bigger investment into a big this offseason.
Oh,
and
finally.
Yeah, so like I think a roadmap would be, hey, you bring back Kyrie on, let's say a 3-year deal. You on draft night, you swing a trade for a big man, a Miles Turner type, something. Nick, here we go. A big that is clearly your best big,
yes.
That is clearly your starting big. And then you spend the rest of free agency. Could you, do you make some trades to try to open up your full MLE? You spend the rest of free agency of tweaking your wings at that point, of spending your MLE if you can get that, making some trades, just bolstering more depth on the wing.
Is there a scenario where there's a successful offseason that doesn't include a guaranteed starting big man? Like this is what we've been talking about. We'll probably do a podcast. We'll do a podcast on the big man options out there and like who we would consider this type of player, but they have to get a guaranteed starting big. That's like no doubt. Is there a successful offseason without that?
Yes, I think there is. I just want them to change out the parts if that's the case. Like let's say they go out and instead of like on draft night, let's say they're planning on bringing back Kyrie. Let's say they go out and they trade for a very defined starting wing. Like it's a wing player.
OG,
like,
somebody.
Right. Yeah, probably not to that level, but like a very like, hey, that dude's a locked in. He's going to be at the 3 or 4 every single night.
A Dorian Finney-Smith type.
Better than Dorian. And then at that point, it's like, all right, now we have like a different rotation of bigs. I just want them to, outside of Kyrie, you have another defined spot in the starting lineup. Because right now it's like, who the crap is starting at the other 3 spots?
Yeah.
I want another defined, spot of like, hey, that's not even a question. That guy is a starter.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. You've got to, for me, what would be a successful offseason, you have to get that guaranteed center. I don't think you can or a big man. I guess it doesn't have to be a 5 necessarily. It could be like a really good 4, but.
Can I give you the unsuccessful part of that question? Unsuccessful offseason. Kyrie walks. You can't pull off a sign and trade. Nobody uses your cap space, and you give in and trade for Rudy Gobert.
And maybe they lose the pick.
Yeah, it starts with losing. Gosh, we just lost like so many fans. Like we've
gotten that question a whole bunch about what would be the doomsday scenario. I don't know why people. I don't know why the Mavs are coming out on the subtext questions. You lose
your pick on lottery night. It comes to the draft. There's nothing you pull off. Kyrie goes to another team. You don't pull in one of the bigger free agents, and then you say, we'll take the chance on Rudy Gobert. And your biggest thing this offseason is you just swapped Kyrie for Rudy Gobert. and then you sign D'Angelo Russell.
You capped it off there with just they became the Wolves. They became the Wolves of last year.
All right, so what's our next question?
Oh my gosh. Oh, good Lord. Yeah. Christian asks, assuming we re-sign Kyrie, do you view wing or big as the biggest position of need? I think I just answered that. I think it's big because they have some wings. Like they have some guys that you're okay with, and Reggie and Josh Green. You don't have.
I think it's a wing, but
I
think wings are more important.
It's true because you look at the playoffs right now, and unless you have a Joel Embiid, a Jokic, somebody like that, you're going small at a certain point anyway. So
yeah, a good wing too. Not like Grant Williams. I can't take shots at people right now because they're probably going to be Mavs next year, and then it's like
the problem. Well, yeah, Grant Williams could be. The problem is the Mavericks need a big to get some like easier wins in the regular season. They need that.
Yeah,
but you need the wing for the playoffs. So, but you didn't make the playoffs this year, so I think the wing is maybe the more immediate need.
Yeah, I think if I had to prioritize, I'd pick wing. If you could lock in a. Is there a better version of Reggie Bullock that you can pull off this offseason to pair with Luka and Kyrie? I would love to do that. If it was a choice of that player or Miles Turner, the big out there, then I would lean towards the wing.
Hunter asked, this is a classic Isaac Harrus question. I wonder if you submitted this question as like
I'm not Hunter.
Put your name as Hunter just to throw me off. Do you think there will be a draft night move by the Mavs that is a tell that Kyrie resigns or leaves? Good. This is a classic Isaac Harrus question.
No, not. It's the second part of the question. I do think there is a draft night trade by Dallas, but I don't think it's going to be a tell-all for Kyrie because, what I could see them trying to do on draft night is try to shed some money, and I don't think it's going to be something that you're going to be able to look at it and say, oh, like, let's say they shed some money. Well, even if it's like, if Kyrie walks, then you have more cap space. So somebody will be like, oh, they're just trying to add more cap space for when, Kyrie's going to go to another team, or they're just trying to open up cap space to get under the tax to get, one of the, another exception, something like if he stays. So I do think they make a trade on draft night, but I don't think it's like going to point towards a Kyrie future.
I went to a seminar today with Bobby Marks and Larry Kuhn, who are like the salary cap, like the CBA experts. And they talked about there's going to be this second apron, which is like the salary tax, luxury tax. Like there's all these just different tax levels where, okay, you have the salary cap. Then you have the luxury tax where you get to a different level where you spend enough money on player salaries that you're like spending too high. Then you start getting penalized. Then there's the apron level, which is like another higher level. There's going to be a second apron level, which is about 17 million over the luxury tax. And that is like no man's land. Like your draft picks start getting frozen at that point. Like wild things will start happening to your team. And so I'm curious, knowing what we've seen the Mavericks do in the past, if they try to not mess with that too, especially re-signing Luka or having Luka at his max, Kyrie maybe at his max. So we'll probably see some kind of like cost-saving move at a certain point. I'm curious if that factors into any of this too, because
or at least a shuffle the deck type of move of, hey, this we're getting this thing started right now. It's a flipping a Tim Hardaway for a big out there.
Another flexibility move where you take one big contract of Bertans and turn it into two smaller contracts. They should do that. Just do it again. I don't think there's anybody out there, but there you go, guys. Appreciate you guys submitting some. Do we want to do some rapid fire ones? We should do some rapid fire ones.
Sure.
Matt, do we bring back Dwight Powell in some sort of minimum deal with the role of coming off the bench?
Listen, if you can get Dwight at the minimum, I think it's great value. The online world would freak out.
Tim McMahon did mention that recently, that he thinks Dwight would come back on a minimum. That's the ideal role for him. Backup. I think he's still a good backup center. He's a backup center that should be making like the minimum or around that, and he's been miscast. Bobby, not Corrala, asked, would you consider anyone besides Luka untouchable in a trade scenario right now?
No. I think the only two that I would put, like, if I had to pick, it would be Maxey and Jaden Hardy. That it wouldn't be like actively shopping. Those are the only two, but they're still gettable in a deal.
Keys asked the question, with Paul George making comments a few weeks ago that it would be easier for NBA players to play in the NFL versus NFL players playing in the NBA. Which Dallas Maverick would be the best football player?
Josh Green.
Me, it's Jaden Hardy. Jaden Hardy's a clear skill position player. 6'4", like that's a receiver right there. Brian asked, would you rather have Anthony Davis or Miles Turner, considering salary and everything, injuries and all that?
Anthony Davis. Yeah.
Yeah. Their injuries kind of match up. Both of them are injury prone. You would rather have Anthony Davis, I think. Even though his salary is about double. Not this past season, but next year. Yeah. So there you go. Guys, subscribe to our subtext. There's a link in the description. Appreciate everybody that submitted questions. You're part of the Raccoon Squad. We will be back on Monday breaking down everything Dallas Mavericks. We'll have some more mailbags next week. We'll have all kinds of good stuff. We'll be talking about draft stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, we're excited about that. Guys, thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.
Boom.